This lesson covers 3 items from the preface of the Volume 2 method book, and we're going to cover an introduction to bar chords, an introduction to slurring, ascending and descending slurs, and also an introduction to position playing. That is the location of the left hand and how we organize our playing in that regard. So a lot of these things will have technique exercises in the last section of the book, but for now this is just an introduction that is needed before we move on to part 1 of the book. So the bar technique, the main thing about this that you want to keep in mind is that although there's not much barring in this book, a lot of it will be used during the chords. In particular in C major you have an F chord, so there'll be a small bar here, and a bar is when that first finger lays across more than one string. There's not much to say about this. When you see it, it'll be pretty self-explanatory because it'll be a little marking with a B, and then the Roman numeral will be the fret number. So if it says B5, that means a bar at the 5th fret. If it says B Roman numeral 2, that'd be a bar at the 2nd fret. And in terms of barring, you don't even have to really practice this introduction here. This is just to let you know what barring is and that it's going to be in the book in a few places. But what I will say is that when you do a bar and you place your finger over multiple strings, there's just a couple of small things that I'd recommend. First thing, only apply pressure to the actual string that needs the pressure. Try not to clamp your whole finger down and apply pressure over everywhere, because that's not really necessary. You only need pressure on the actual string. And not much pressure, of course, because these strings are pretty small and wimpy. So they're very easy to push down. Also, let the weight of the arm just pull the finger into the strings like this, rather than just create a vice grip between the thumb and the first finger. That will make your hand pretty sore after a while, but instead, let the weight of the arm kind of pull the strings down this way. That'll relieve a little bit of the strain or the vice grip between these two fingers. And the last thing, and this is the most important thing, is that when you're barring, you have to be close to the fret, just like any other type of playing. If you tried to play a note and you're not close to the fret, it buzzes away. So playing close to the fret is super important. Same thing in barring. You have to be right up next to the fret in order to get all those notes ringing. Now watch what happens if I do an angled finger. So if I don't play flush with the fret on all the strings, some strings, like the first string now, won't be close to the fret. And it's going to buzz and not sound properly, right? So I have to straighten this out. So you have to be very, very careful that you're right up next to that fret and not at an angle. So like that, not like this. And from your viewpoint, from the camera right now, it maybe even looks like my finger's over top of the fret. But if I really look underneath here, I'll see that it's not. It's just really cozied up next to it. And it might even require that you go a little bit on the side of your finger, just a little bit, because that middle part of your finger there is quite fleshy and soft. So you just want to cozy up next to that fret and have it straight. Like I said, there's not many bars in this book. There's one in the F chord down here, that you'll need to do. And there's maybe 1 or 2 up at the 5th fret here. But they're only half bars, very small and very minimal. So it's not a technique that you have to think about very much for this book. In terms of an introduction to slurs, ascending slurs and descending slurs, or in guitar lingo, hammer-ons and pull-offs, occur in a ton of guitar music, so they're going to become very important. There's a very good slur exercise in part 4 in the exercise and warm-up section, or the technique section. But for now, this is just an introduction. You don't even really have to play it right now, but you should know about this before we begin going over more. So an ascending slur is where a note is played, such as the open G, and then the left hand finger comes in, and you can see I didn't re-pluck that note. it's this hand, the left hand, that's hammering down that note and creating the sound. So that's an ascending slur because it's going from G up to A. And the main tips for ascending slurs is to not push hard with the finger. It's more about like a snappy, quick movement rather than strength. It doesn't require any strength. It's more just move quickly and snap the finger into the string. You could try playing the first note with your first finger, a G sharp for example. Same concept, you play the first note and hammer this note down. And if you move in a really reflex-oriented way, you'll find that you'll get a nice clear sound. Just make sure you're close to the fret, that your fingers are curved, that you're on your fingertips. All the things that we covered in the first book will be even more important in the second book. And if you want to play slurs well, you have to have a good hand position. Your fingers have to be curved so that your finger comes straight down on that string. And it has enough snap to it that it will ring the note clearly. You can practice slur exercises. There's ones in part 4, like I said, of the book. So I'll be making a video lesson for that slur exercise as well. But for now, this is just an introduction to tell you what that is. So that's an ascending slur. A descending slur is where you play the first note, and then the left hand plucks the string, so to speak. So I'll play the first note, and then with the left hand only, I release the note. It's kind of like a left hand plucking of the string, right? When you first try it, I recommend you pull down towards your feet so that your finger comes into the string below. Later on, you might not want that. You might want to pull out so you don't hit that string below, because sometimes in pieces, strings need to be ringing out and whatnot. But for now, I recommend actually like plucking the note so you get some clarity out of that note. But like I said, we'll be doing a slur technique at the end of the book and a technique exercise, and we'll cover this a lot more. So the same thing can occur in a descending slur or a pull off when you have the note below. So if I go from A to G sharp, it just means that both fingers have to be down for a moment. That way, when that note plucks, that note is already there and it's ready to sound. Ascending slur, descending slur. So, one of the things I'll say about slurs is that their main function is to facilitate legato. So when you add slurs to something, it usually sounds a little bit smoother and more legato. And it can often, although we work against this sometimes, work towards something beyond this, it often creates a strong, weak sound. So you'll find a lot of slurs, especially in my book here, will go from the strong beat to a weak beat. That way it's strong, weak with the sound, and that's appropriate to the music. And then you'll see consistent patterns with slurs in pieces because of that. You don't have to worry too much about that at this point. They will occur in the duets, not much in the solo pieces, so they'll just be single line slurs, and they're pretty easy to spot. Remember that ties, they look similar, but ties carry the same note over. So a slur is always going to go to a new note, so you won't confuse them. Phrase marks, you can sometimes confuse phrase marks and slurs, but it doesn't really matter because slurs facilitate legato, so you don't have to use slurs ever, although you'll want to if you want to facilitate legato. So a smooth playing style will sometimes involve slurs, but other times it won't. It's really a decision that the performer makes. And as you progress, you'll be able to make those decisions on your own. But for now, if it says to slur in a piece, you should add those slurs. The final thing I wanted to talk about was position playing. Don't get too confused about this. There's a whole section on 3rd and 5th position reading in this book. But in part 1, there's a few spots that go into 2nd position. So what is position playing? Well, position playing is just simply the location of your left hand. So we name the location based on where your first finger is. If your first finger is at the 1st fret, you are in first position. If your first finger is at the 5th fret, you're in the 5th position. Because guitar playing sometimes has crazy chords where you're all on the same fret, for example, position can be a little bit confusing. So for now, position playing is best understood when you're playing with a 1 finger per fret rule. So when each finger gets 1 fret, it's easy to understand the position. This would be 5th position. So this is first position. This would be second position. This would be third position. This would be fourth position. This would be 5th position. Doesn't matter if I change strings. This is 5th position. This is 4th position. This is 7th position. This is 3rd position. There's only one other thing I want to mention about position playing, because that's a pretty easy concept and you might be thinking like, well, why would I need that? Well, one reason you might need it is that in pieces, the piece might indicate that just with a Roman numeral 4 that you should be in 4th position. And that gives you a lot of information. It means your first finger is going to play there, and your second there, and your third there, and your 4th finger there. It kind of sets you up and organizes your playing right on the spot. The other thing it does is that it might give you some clues to your technique. When you change positions, you remember the good left hand position of the thumb behind the second finger? Well, same thing here is that when we change positions, the thumb should move with the hand. So the arm just moves this hand position around and the thumb stays there. So if we're in first position, my thumb is behind my second finger there. If I'm in 5th position, my thumb is still behind my second finger. Be careful when you change positions that your thumb doesn't lag behind and you start playing like this. Keep your thumb in line with your second finger at all times. So if you're in second position, your thumb's behind the 3rd fret. If you're in first position, your thumb's behind the 2nd fret. This again will help organize your technique and your playing so that you're not just randomly doing things. So there's some first and second position playing in this book, and then part 2 is dedicated to 3rd and 5th position playing. So you're going to be playing a lot in this area of the guitar and lots of this area of the guitar. So that's just an introduction, and when it comes up in the playing, I'll be giving video lessons on all that content when it comes up as well. So you'll get a review of this during the videos. So that's just the preface, those few pages of the preface that I wanted to say a few extra words about, but then we'll move on to the next video. We'll move on to part 1.